Pashaparo, Y97. Thank you for tuning. So, interesting developments going on globally as we speak. So, more and more, we took a look at the opportunity for employers to kind of say that employees needed to get the vax, right? So I saw an article earlier today that was recent, as of last week, and that got me looking into some things, and I found a video on YouTube. So let's take a look at that real quick to get this topic started today.
A big show of support for a Houston Methodist nurse who spearheaded a legal fight against mandatory COVID vaccines. Today was the deadline for holdout employees to get the vaccine or lose their jobs.
But employees who refuse to get the shot are also refusing to give up their fight. Marcelino Benito shows us what happened tonight and what happens next. Marcelino.
Guys, tonight many of these Houston Methodist employees gathered together for the first time. Their 2-week unpaid suspension is now underway. When it's over, they'll be fired, all for choosing not to get vaccinated. After weeks of taking a stand against Houston Methodist Hospital's COVID-19 vaccine mandate, Jennifer Bridges, the nurse at the center of a now federal lawsuit, walked out of Methodist Hospital Baytown for the last time.
I cried the whole way out.
Waiting for her was a crowd of supporters and dozens of nurses who are losing their jobs too for declining to roll up their sleeves for the vaccine.
I kind of felt betrayed a little bit.
Many of these men and women spent the last year and a half treating COVID-19 patients.
I work in the ER, so it was crazy during the whole COVID pandemic, and it's like we were short-staffed, over capacity with patients. Like, it was just a lot, and then it's like for them to kind of do this to us, kind of like a slap in the face, or that's how I felt.
Today was the deadline to get vaccinated, and Houston Methodist CEO Dr. Mark Boom says 99% of employees are immunized. He added, it's unfortunate that today's milestone of Houston Methodist becoming the safest hospital system in the country is being overshadowed by a few disgruntled employees.
It just seems cruel.
Nurses now facing unemployment say they didn't deserve to be treated this way.
They need to give.
Now, with all respect, for entertainment purposes, shout out, as you can see here, KHOU11, just to give credit where credit's due for the video. When you think about nursing staff, right, for just going into that industry alone, when you think about the nursing staff, doctors, etc., hospital staff in general, I mean, they were already there and present through the whole chaos with the quote unquote ill, right, the whole time, and now, you know, they're being told they need to get, now that all that is kind of like behind us and the emergency is, you know, what it is, quote unquote, now they're being forced to get the vaccination or being seen as disposable, right, when they were just on call, you know, being a essential workers, right? Let's continue.
People choices. They can't force things upon people that they're not comfortable with.
And tonight they tell us there are no regrets and their fight is just beginning.
If I have to eat ramen noodles for a month or two, I'm okay with that, because the rest of my life and my health and my family is more important than money or this job.
Bridges tells us dozens more nurses are expected to join her lawsuit in the coming days. Lawyers are expected to file their briefings with a federal judge later this week. Reka, back to you.
And Jennifer Bridges says she's going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court if she has to. Of course, we're going to stay on top of this. Thank you, Marcelino.
A lot of people don't.
So, what do you think about that? What about your job? Have you talked to your employers about what their plans are for the future? Do you have a backup plan in place to support yourself if for some reason the current employment you have is no longer available to you? What is your plan? So we know as of June 1st, employers can legally require for employees to re-enter the workplace, right? And can provide incentives to encourage, according to new guidance from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. All right. So when we look into the employers can require the stick, the poke. Is this why Facebook had programmed everybody so long for? Anyway, employers can legally require, right, for workplace. So companies are still required to provide reasonable accommodations for employees who are exempt from mandatory immunization based on the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title VII. So I was interested in what exactly that said. Here's what I found. So the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, to give you a little history on it, was enacted as part of the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and is a civil rights law that prohibits discrimination based on disability. It affords similar protections against discrimination to Americans with disabilities as did the Civil Rights Act of 64, right? So in 86, the National Council of Disability had recommended enactment of the ADA and drafted the first version of the bill, which was introduced in the House and Senate in 1988. Millennials, this was going on, you know, when we was first looking at Nintendos. That was a distraction, I guess. So the final version of the bill was signed into law on July 26, 1990 by Bush. It was later amended in 2008 and signed by Bush, right? With changes effective as of 2009. So the ADA basically gives civil rights protections to individuals with disabilities similar to those provided to individuals on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, and religion, right? The ADA and ADAAA also assure equal opportunity for individuals with disabilities for access to business, employment, transportation, state and local government programs and services, and telecoms. So what is the definition of disability under the ADA? An individual with a disability is defined by the ADA as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, a person who has a history of or record of such an impairment, or a person who is perceived by others as having such an impairment. The ADA does not specifically name all the impairments that are covered. Now, you know, there's something really interesting going on here that just popped in my mind, because when you go to, it's a massive uptick in firearm purchases, right? And it's, you know, everybody, the ammo shortage, and they say it's because the new people were buying guns or firearms, and, you know, everything from trainings to range times to holsters is going through the roof, right? Permits for states to have permits, etc. That's all being stretched to capacity and very delayed with processing and stuff because of the insurgent flow of new applicants, etc. So what I thought was interesting is, okay, so if you don't, the only way to in some cases, apparently, to not be forced to, or one of the ways to is having the employer know that it's in conflict with a disability, which is either mental or physical, which is actually one of the questions when you're filing for permits and firearm related stuff. So is this like one of those write-ins where it's directly being combative to are they going after firearm people indirective? Indirectly? So anyway, let's get back to it. And then it goes in to tell you what the four main types of discrimination are, and are you protected by the ADAD at the workplace, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So going back to this, okay? The commission, which enforces workplace anti-discrimination, said employer requirements and incentives can't be coercive, but didn't provide examples of a legal office. The guidance also says that companies should work to find alternative arrangements for employees who are unable to get vaccinated for medical disability or other reasons. All right. Now, what I thought was pretty interesting, if you fast forward, well, let's cover this real quick. So employers should keep in mind that because some individuals or demographic groups may face greater barriers to receiving the POP than others, some employees may be more likely to be negatively impacted by the POP requirement, right? So it would also be illegal to apply a requirement in a way that treats employees differently based on a race, national origin, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, pregnancy, disability, age, or genetic information. So employers can offer incentives for employees to voluntarily confirm their vaccinate status, but those should be optional. And the commission said employers should not pressure their employees to share information and any medical information, as such records are to be kept confidential. Right? So it says companies are also, here's the catch though. So everything's feeling really good and strong up until there, right? And here's where it gets a little sticky. So companies are also required to provide a safe workplace based on Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is known as OSHA guidelines. So this includes assessing the risk of exposure and developing a plan to protect employees. So with the POP, this could mean requiring POP, providing personal protective gear, PPE, right? And or setting capacity limits in the physical workplace. So we spent a good bit of time on YNet 7 speaking about related topics such as this being on the future. You know, I remember talking to people as long ago as April, May of last year, and everybody's laughing at you. No, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. You see? And a lot of the people that are in the big chains, all they do is follow what the government does. Because then big business or businesses in general tend to mimic government. All right? Let me know if you think that's the case. So if you had put that in mind, the question again is, what would you do if you couldn't go to work tomorrow? And not even in the sense of like the lockdowns you just went through, which was preliminary. But do you have that plan? And could this help actually buy in the population into being replaced with machines, automation, cyborgs, robots? Because it would be more sanitary and less risky, less opportunity for contamination. Anyway, let's check this out right quick. We'll close on this. So, employees who don't get vaccinated due to a disability, a religious belief, or other reasons may be entitled to a reasonable accommodation, the commission said. This could mean requiring a face mask, physical distancing, modified shifts, telework arrangements, or work reassignment. So, I'm not saying how do I want to say it? That's interesting. This could mean requiring a face mask, physical distancing, modified shifts, telework arrangements, or work reassignment. Is that like gonna put you back in like a is that gonna put like everybody in like a slave, box somewhere doing that, doing the same work in not the same conditions or not at the same time, so is that going to create a pool of people that are going to be forced to work, or not say forced, but in their mind forced to work overnight shift when the senior I'm okay with getting the pop people aren't there? Is that going to create any competition for that? How many spaces are going to be available? How do you set up a workspace or distance people that are going to work at the same time? That's kind of an interesting statement if you consider the infinity of possibility. This could mean requiring a face mask, which, okay, you've been going through that, right? Physical distancing, you've been going through that. Modified shifts, you might have worked something like that out, but you never had it kind of like just being thrown on you, because when they say reasonable accommodations, it doesn't mean that it's going to be in the way that you actually want. Like, you're going to wake up one day and say, hey, look, I'm just going to work from home and, roll out of bed, go to work, it's going to be great life. No, that doesn't mean that's the way they got to give it to you, because all they got to do is say that they attempted an unreasonable accommodation and you declined thereafter. If they wanted to be looking for a way to get rid of you, so telework arrangements or work reassignment is even more interesting. So, if you're in a position where whatever and they reassign you because you don't want to get the pop, it doesn't mean you'll be reassigned to equal or greater position. What if reassignment means that you're gonna wind up being demoted? Like, this is the way to move everything around in the workplace without having, I'm not. Well, if a person doesn't get the pop, this gives basically the employers the ability to restructure everything involving the split of that demographic after they just got done telling you they didn't have to discriminate they wrote the loophole in for discrimination. Now, I'm not just saying in the traditional form of discrimination, but yeah. Tell me what you think in the comments below. All right. Pasha Pyro. Oh, before we go, there's one other thing. So let's take a look at this, because remember we talked about the OSHA? So OSHA covers most private sector employers and all workers in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. jurisdictions, either directly through federal OSHA or through OSHA as an approved state program. Now, who is subject? OSHA does not apply to the self-employed. So a farmer employing only immediate family members, an employer employed in an industry regulated by another federal agency, such as, DOT, FAA, NRC, etc., or a public employer, right? So some states have their own OSHA-approved state plan, but OSHA does not apply to the self-employed. A farmer, for example, a farmer employing only immediate family members, an employer employed in an industry regulated by another federal agency, or a public employer. So OSHA covers most private sector employers and their workers in all 50 states. All right. So we said it couldn't happen. People that were saying it couldn't happen. Never say never. Pasha Pyro, YNS7. Thank you for tuning. The replay.